Hello everyone and welcome back to Predator Hunting Grounds. This episode we play as the original protagonist Dutch, who is gonna fuck some shit up. But before we do this, let us listen to his tapes to see where he was after the events of the first film.
It's September 12th, 1987. My name is Major Alan Schaefer, also known as Dutch, U.S. Army veteran, Special Ops Commander, and the only survivor of the Valverde incident. These tapes are my personal testimony. Insurance. Should anything happen to me, what I found won't be lost. My team was brought in to rescue a Guatemala cabinet minister and his aide, who had been captured by guerrilla forces in Valverde. We located their downed helicopter, and the skinned bodies of those aboard hung in nearby trees, seemingly at the hands of guerrilla fighters. After assaulting their camp, it became clear that the mission was a setup. American intelligence had sent us to retrieve the captured agents who had been on recon for future military action. But none of that matters, because while we were clearing out the guerrillas, something was hunting us. An invisible killer tracked us as we made our way to the extraction point. In 24 hours, it wiped out my entire team. Rick Hawkins, Blaine Cooper, Mac Elliott, Billy Soule, Jorge Ramirez, and Al Dillon. The best soldiers I've ever known. Men I trusted with my life were butchered like animals. It was a nightmare. We walked in with guns, but it had perfect camouflage, advanced weaponry, and could see heat. It was strong and smart, a pitiless hunter. I waited, I watched, and when I understood it, when I saw how it hunted, I killed it. As it lay dying, in a final fuck you, it activated an explosive device. I barely escaped that blast. My radiation sickness and the crater of the explosion are the only evidence it ever was here. I've given my official statement to Agent Peter Keyes of the OWLF, but it's become clear I needed to investigate Valverde myself. Keyes was thorough, but he asked all the wrong questions. I mean, we have proof of alien life, but that life sees us as game. It's an alien whose first contact with humanity was to hunt us for sport. All Keyes cared about was the technology lost in the explosion. He can see the jungle for the trees. I see the threat. He sees the opportunity. Spies are all the same. I mean, we aren't people to them. We are assets. How many soldiers would he feed to those monsters just for a chance to steal from them or to learn from them? The government can't be trusted. So I will have to do this on my own. I'm cutting my treatment short and going off the grid. I will make my way back to South America to Valverde. I was told that there were stories about demons who make trophies of man. I'd like to hear those stories.
And as you can clearly see, Arnold himself has returned to reprise the role, which is totally badass. Good vibes, hi back again. Onto tape 2. Also welcome backstage.
April 8th, 1991. I'm not dead yet. I'll admit, I regret not curing my radiation sickness before I left. It made leaving the country difficult. I cashed in a few favors, took one too many off-the-book flights in rusted-out buckets, but I made it back to Valverde. The area was on lockdown, sealed by American intelligence for study. The complex centered on a crater from the alien self-destruction. I found the scientists slumming in a local bar. A few drinks, a couple of threads later, he was ready to talk. It wasn't much, barely anything I didn't already know. The blast emitted a form of radiation they'd never seen before. Some believed it was extraterrestrial, some didn't. Either they're not too bright, or there's nothing to find. I decided to let them keep searching in vain. It kept them busy and off my trail. I've been touring villages and small towns using the cover of an author writing about South American folklore. I don't know if any of them bought in, but they took my money and told their stories. The closer they were to the jungle, the more stories of devils in the trees. Some were bullshit, made up on the spot, but some carried consistencies that I couldn't ignore. Whatever it was,
I have a question for you after this tape.
Who make trophies of man, the devil of the trees, or the skull taker, the stories always began on the hottest summer that they could remember. In the summer of 1987, Valverde nearly broke its all-time high in temperatures. They love the heat. It must remind them of home. Everything else confirmed the truth of the stories. Proud warriors skinned and hanged, skulls and spines ripped from their bodies. Maybe it was obvious from the beginning, but it wasn't until I heard the stories that I truly accepted the purpose of these mutilations. I mean, they're taking trophies. They travel impassable distances to hunt us, skin us, and mount us over some alien fireplace on another world. It would be disgusting if it weren't so familiar. Where do I go now? It's been on my mind all year. The takeaway from all this intel is that they've been doing this for decades, centuries maybe. They're coming back, and I need to be there when they do.
Ask away. Are you going to play someday Five Nights at Freddy's? No, never.
The reason why I'll never play it is simple. It used to have a good premise, and then, like most other games, they just kept, milking that thing dry of any good potential, and the fact that the game was literally the same no matter how many times, like you fucking played the sequels. It's literally just try not to get jump scared simulator, and it's just, I don't know. I think like it peaked when a fan made their own custom game out of it, which was the joy of creation, and I believe that personally was the peak because it was so different that there was no way the series could ever be topped, even if it wasn't officially like made by the man himself. So to answer the question, no, never. Also because I just don't like that premise anymore. It's not really that interesting, and plus, I already know what to expect, and that's not fun. If you already know what to expect, what's the point of playing a game, you know? Especially a game as predictable as Five Nights at Freddy's. Anyway. On to tape number 3.
June 27th, 1992. It's hard to remember that the most important part of an operation is patience. You can plan the perfect op, but you can't account for everything. If shit goes south, there's nothing to do but to adapt and finish the mission. Sometimes you just get lucky. I was in the dock, 10 clicks downriver from the Valverde border, figuring out my next move.
Bendy and the ink machine?
I was ready to pack it in. I thought that I learned everything.
Again, I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. Again, it's just, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I honestly don't know. When it comes to those types of games, I generally, I don't know. It's just that depends on if it's released on PlayStation, and if it is, yeah, sure. But if not, then well, it's obviously not going to be the case. But I'll consider it in the future anyway.
That I could, that there was nothing left for me to find. The OWLF had abandoned the detonation site a year ago. And I thought that they already shipped back to America. That's when I saw Agent Peter Keyes tie his skiff to the dock. I haven't seen Keyes since I gave my official statement to him. It was impossible, but there he was with 3 of his buddies. All agents. The clean, tidy outfits give them away all the time. They don't want to get down in the dirt, you see. That's what they pay soldiers to do. Keyes walked up, looked right at me, and shook my hand. With the radiation sickness, I've lost a lot of weight, so I thought that he maybe would not recognize me, but then he greeted me like we were old pals. Keyes is a good spy, saying nothing, implying everything. We spent the next few hours trading war stories at the bar. If you had heard us, you would never have suspected we were trading intel on an alien manhunter. His cover was that they have been looking for a serial killer, a sadist who has been operating in the area for years, hunting people like animals and then skinning them alive. Keyes wanted to talk about the monster, so it all came out in the cover story. In many ways, they were just a few steps behind, surveying villages for information, locating witnesses. He did confirm one thing that I only considered. He told me how the killer chose his victims. They were always armed. A rifle, a pistol, a knife in a boot. He wasn't taking kids or random villagers. He wanted a challenge. Whatever it was a hunter. When it killed for sport. I wish they were here for a military action, recon for an invasion. But the truth was so much worse. We are prey, animals, fit only to be hunted. Keys and his buddies paid the tab and mine, but before he left, he winked at me and he said, "Stay out of the jungle. That's where he gets you." I tracked Keys and his team for weeks, but they didn't learn anything new. Maybe they knew that I was there, maybe they didn't, I don't know. I've risked enough for now. I think it's time to disappear. Keep my ear to the ground. Be patient.
On to the next tape.
March 3rd, 1996, Zaire. I thought I could wait. I thought that I could hold back and make my move at the right time. I couldn't. Fuck. I had to find them. I needed to hunt it or let it hunt me. I joined up with any private military company that was headed into the hot zone. I pulled every string, cashed out every favor just to follow the sweat and the death that attracted the demon. I eventually put together a team myself. Lost soldiers and haunted men, willing to fight and to die wherever I led them. They thought that I was a legend, and I let them believe that. I'm quiet and good in what I do. They needed them to see me as a legend, so that they could take them to die in a sweltering jungle. We went on more missions than I can remember. We didn't fire until we were fired at. They thought that it was my code. It wasn't. I was waiting and watching. Our last mission was an evac op in the Congo. A private munition base had gone dark. When we arrived, they'd been dead for days. Bodies strung up on floodlights around the base, all of them skinned, some missing skulls and spines. We secured the site and waited for backup to arrive. In the heat of the day, I stared into the waves of heat coming off the concrete, thinking that any minute they might come alive as the invisible killer. And then they did. I didn't wait. I unloaded every round I had. Trusting me, my team fired in the same direction. It wasn't the first time I'd done it, but this time I knew what I was looking for. It was so fast, we couldn't hit it. We panicked, and stray rounds struck the crate of RPGs. And that explosion hit other munitions that exploded. By the time the smoke cleared, the demon was dead, but so were all my men. I took samples of its blood, pieces of its anatomy, and what tech that I could salvage. And then I burned everything. Then it disappeared. I never checked in mid-HQ. As far as I know, I was counted among the dead.
I see. So he did kill one after, that period. Interesting. So obviously this timeline, this obviously was a year before the events of Predator 2. So I assume this is going to take place during that event. Yep.
October 12th, 1997, Los Angeles. I needed to come back to the States. It wasn't impossible to sneak contraband through customs. But I wasn't willing to risk what I found in the Congo falling into the wrong hands. Instead, I traveled to Mexico aboard a cargo ship bound for the port of Altamira. From there, I made my way to Tijuana, and I bunkered down. I had tangible proof of extraterrestrial life in my possession, but no idea what to do with it. I'm not a scientist. I did a soldier's duty and secured valuable intel. This was out of my pay grade. I kept an eye on the news. Los Angeles was having a record-breaking heat wave and a gang war on the streets. It was perfect. I could feel it in my bones. I'd been tracking them for so long, I could think like them. I could smell the prey. I could see the hunting ground. I had to get to LA. Crossing back into the States from Tijuana wasn't that difficult, but by the time that I'd reached the city, it was already over. Like Valverde, the OWLF only found crumbs. What I'd hoped might be an alien ship turned out to be only a launching site. I wanted it too much, and I got sloppy. I breached the OWLF's quarantine and was captured. I'd hoped to be bailed out by Agent Keyes, but he died. With Keyes gone, the OWLF was leaderless and disorganized. I was interrogated, but I negotiated my release by bartering the alien materials that I'd recovered from the Congo. During the negotiations, it was clear how little they knew. They needed someone who understood the threat, so I offered to work with the OWLF as a consulting advisor. They had the funding, the technology that I needed to continue my hunt. I wouldn't work for them, but I would work with them. There will be a weapon that I can use to hunt down these predators as they move to fresh ground. It's only a matter of time until they see us as a real threat. When the prey can fight back, it's no longer a hunt. It is war.
Oh, I see. So he arrived in LA after Keyes died. Interesting. Huh. So it's obvious now that this takes place obviously 11 years ago by, and sure that they come across something here, which if it follows along with the tapes that the OWLF tapes that have been, yeah, it is
Well, that is interesting.
very interesting. Makes you wonder what exactly happened after, like he helped as a consulting advisor. And I imagine in this we're gonna find out exactly what happens, because judging by the next tape, Stargazer, it's obviously in the timeline of what the OWLF tapes have told us. When Stargazer was introduced, the OWLF was immediately shut down, and then they were getting swapped out with Stargazer as like the backup. So I imagine this is good, and I think this may or may not be the event where he encounters the female predator, I believe.
March 3rd, 2008. We've gotten good at killing predators. Every time we find one, we come back with more tech, more research, and the OWLF's funding goes up. Together, we have gotten stronger and more efficient. For a time, the aliens were surprisingly predictable. They had no idea that we knew so much about them. But that began to change. They sent better hunters every time. They're beginning to see us as a threat. Or we've become a more worthy prize. Maybe both. We know this because our last encounter was special. We weren't certain if they had any gender to speak of, but that changed when we came into contact with the female. She was smarter and deadlier. She didn't fuck around like the males did. She was direct, ruthless. and skilled. I was in Laos when we first came into contact with her. It was Valverde all over again. Her ambush wiped out my entire team. Only this time, she got me. In a small village, I lost track of her, just long enough for her to pin me with a razor net. Pinned against the wall, razors cutting into my face. I've been fighting for so long, I was ready to die. I should be dead. Instead of making the kill, she cloaked and vanished into the jungle. The net relaxed, and I escaped with my life, and a scar to remember her by. She spared me, only me, like she knew who I was. I returned to the exfil, my first failed mission in a long time. Are we going about this wrong? I mean, we've learned so much, but in doing so, have we made ourselves a bigger target? I can't stop thinking about something Napoleon said. You must not fight too often with one enemy, or you will teach them all your art of war. I started this believing that we were learning how to hunt them, or maybe she let me live to just be hunted another day. We were teaching them how to hunt us.
Interesting. So it seems that, yeah, my suspicions were indeed confirmed, where it's like, that does raise an interesting question, though. With all the fact that they've been hunting so many of them, would that imply that, yeah, we were obviously making ourselves look more like a worthy prize for young bloods who are basically reaching their sophomore initiation hunt to, you know, give themselves the marks? Because if that is indeed the case, that would definitely imply that, yeah, the female sees Dutch as something, saw probably him as someone who's not quite worthy to die just yet, sort of thing. It's very interesting indeed. Alright, now here we go to Stargazer, where I imagine this is where the OWLF is going to be discontinued and then going to get swapped out with the new hotness, quote unquote. And this obviously takes place, let's see, so from 2008 to 2019, let's see. So 10 years. Okay, so it's 10 years later.
March 3rd.
Wait, whoops. Sorry, I actually almost replayed the exact same tape.
January 13th, 2019. I knew that the Predator's deployment to Earth would make it impossible to keep all of this a secret. Sooner or later, there would be another player on the board. I'd hoped that it would be another agency, one that understood and respected the threat. Project Stargazer. Our initial intelligence on Stargazer was that they were capable, funded, but inexperienced. But they were smart. They took the OWLF's funding and got it shut down. Everyone we could identify in their group was a disavowed member of another agency, including the OWLF. Lacking strong leadership and a clear directive, they were sloppy and arrogant. They were aware of the Predator's threat, and while they had many of the pieces, they struggled to see the bigger picture. Stargazer was so far behind that we didn't see them as a threat until the event in Mexico. The recovered Predator escape pod was an extraordinary find for Stargazer, but the death toll was a heavy price to pay for taking a Predator captive. My task force has many directives, but one of the most primary is we do not take captives. Retrieve technology, corpses, and other intelligence. But there's no value in a live Predator, only liability. The enemy does not want peace. The enemy does not negotiate. Its only drive on Earth is to hunt. What we might learn from a captive Predator would never be worth the risk to our people. Stargazer didn't learn from their mistakes, and the technology they've recovered has only made them cocky. When the government cut ties to the agency, it should have shuttered their project permanently, but they only shifted their goals. Guerrilla factions and private military companies are being contracted by Stargazer to set up bases and equipment in locations that we have identified as ideal hunting grounds. We believe that the former intelligence project is setting itself up to be a fully independent dealer of otherworldly arms. This is the worst-case scenario. Hostile forces will use those weapons on their enemies, and they will use them on us. All the while, the true enemy stalks us unseen. It's a distraction mankind can't afford. Stargazer will have to be dealt with.
Yeah, which also goes in line with the fact that you have to do indeed fight them in the game, of course.
Do you think they want? Maybe they want to destroy humanity.
Well, that's what the Predator tried to explain. Or at least Shane Black's Predator tried to emphasize, but I doubt that's exactly what they want. My guess is if we're going based off of Predator lore, they're always honorable hunters. They don't, they don't kill like anybody just because if they do, those are considered bad-blooded predators that are basically the equivalent of homicidal serial killers that just kill for the sake of killing. And it's like the predators have a code. They don't kill like pregnant women. They don't kill unarmed prey. They don't kill people with diseases or are dying. They only kill those that are worthy. Like, they also never kill children. They only kill those that are armed, seem to be a worthy challenge, or that they view as a valuable trophy that needs to be saved, especially for last, to prove their worth in combat, sort of thing. And every time predators go for like that honorable fight, the prey, most of the time mainly humans, have almost always won, simply because they understood how they hunted. They figured out ways to, figure out the loopholes in their strategies, and then use those loopholes against the predator's technology. And Dutch did it by having traps placed all over the place, and he used the mud as a means to cloak himself. But when that cover was blown, he relied on one specific trap, which was a boulder trap that was hung from a tree. And when the predator was right above him, he cut the cord and it crushed the predator. And he was going to finish it off, but then it did the whole thing where it self-destructed, and yeah, he got the radiation sickness. Predator 2, that predator, who, mind you, had one of his arms cut off with his own weapon. Detective Harrigan fought the predator in hand-to-hand combat, but he managed to kill the predator with the smart disc by jamming it into his stomach. And as a sign of respect, the elder gave him a pistol that he was given, back in the 1700s, to Dutch as a sign of respect and honor. And then they left. And then, it was all just a blur. And then Royce obviously did exactly what Dutch did, except he was doing this against a super predator, which was more evolved. But may have been evolved, but that didn't mean the same tricks couldn't be done twice, basically. But they were stuck on that alien hunting planet for the whole entirety of that, so yeah. But we don't talk about the Predator, but yeah, the Predator was, they just ganged up on him and then he died. That was literally it.
You are saying that they don't kill people with corona LOL social disguising.
Well, I mean, to put it simply, probably. But no, I'm referring simply to, say, for example, if you have lung cancer, or you're, you have some sort of, illness, due to age or whatever, they won't kill you because of that, because they see that as a dishonorable thing. Like in Aliens vs. Predator, where, Wayland was, being held up by one of the Predators, but he saw that he had, lung cancer, so he let him go. But then Wayland fucked up by making a homemade flamethrower to burn the Predator on the back, and then, of course, the Predator saw that as an insult, so he killed him simply because that was out of a sign of, disrespect, of course, because, it's like, if someone spares you, you don't turn the other cheek and then try to kill them at the end of the day, like Frieza did try to do to Goku on Namek after he spared him and gave him energy. Instead of Frieza minding his own business and living to fight another day, he chose to use that energy to try and kill Goku. But as a sign of pity and frustration, Goku then kills Frieza, basically by sending the energy back at him and killed him. Well, quote unquote killed him. It didn't quite kill him, but it incapacitated him for some time. But yeah, I don't think they're invading. But my thing is I think they see the humans as more of a worthy prize